Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Lecha, Kudash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. All right, there's going to be a continuation of Daniel, the 11th chapter. I believe last time we ended at the 27th verse. All right, and so we're going to begin at the 28th verse this time. And basically, what you have at this point is Antiochus Epiphanes, Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes, all right, has gone into Egypt his first time. All right, he defeated Ptolemy the sixth Philometor. All right, in the Sixth Syrian War. He basically, the first portion of it. All right, he goes up into Egypt, defeats Ptolemy, sets Ptolemy up as a puppet ruler, I believe, in Memphis. Okay, and they basically make these agreements, all right, outwardly, which inwardly they don't really, it wasn't going to stand. Okay, and so now after this first encounter, all right, when Antiochus makes his first voyage into Egypt, verse 28 says, this is after he has done all of that and he's returned, all right, he's leaving Egypt. It says, verse 28, then shall he return into his land with great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant, and he shall do exploits and return into his own land. All right. And so after Antiochus had, taken Pelusium, Memphis, certain portions of Egypt, okay, and he had set up his nephew Ptolemy Philometor, all right, as a puppet ruler over there, he returned. Okay, but as it says here, he returned with great riches, of course, because he had defeated them, taking their riches. It says, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant, which is Israel, and he shall do exploits, and then he's going to return into his own land. And this is after his first voyage into Egypt. So now we're going to read about that. All right, going here into the book of First Maccabees. All right, the first chapter. Okay, and starting at we could start at 16th verse. All right, it says, now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have the dominion of two realms. Wherefore and this is the first time, all right, when he goes up into Egypt. All right, wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen, and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they got the strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took spoils thereof. See? So in verse 28, when it says he's going to return with great riches, that's what we're reading about. He took the spoils, right? It says, and after that Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year. All right, remember that he was going to return into his land with great riches, but on his way there, his heart shall be against the holy covenant, which is Israel, and he shall do exploits and return to his land. So now we're reading that here in First Maccabees, the first chapter. All right, so it says here, he had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude. And he entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar, and the candlestick of light, and all the vessels thereof. Remember, these are the exploits that he was doing. Okay, now to get the timing, the date. Okay, let me pull up maybe like a clear sheet here. All right, so we can do the calculations here. Now, remember, the calculation, the time, the way they told time here in the book of Maccabees is different than how you see it in the secular history. Okay, so now if we jump up to all right, verse 10. Okay, it says here, and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 147th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say um, Maccabees. All right, let's say first Maccabees, and then we're gonna say secular time. All right, time. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna show, all right, the difference in the timing. It says Antiochus came to rulership. So let's say Antiochus the fourth reign starts in the book of First Maccabees. It says here, all right, that he reigned in the 137th year. Okay, so that's 137. Okay, and in the secular history, when you look it up, all right, it tells you that he actually rules 175 BC. Okay, which if you look it up here, all right, it tells you that his reign started in September 175 BC. Okay, so now this is when he starts reigning. All right, now when you jump down to after he goes into Egypt, okay, and he returns, they said that was in the 143rd year. Okay, so that's let's say return from Egypt, 143rd year. Okay, that's what the book of Maccabees says. Now, if you do the math, the time difference between 137 and 143 is about what, 6 years? Okay, so that would be if you subtract, all right, the 6 years from 175 BC, you'll be right around 169 BC. Reason I said subtract is because from 137 to 143 is 6 years later. All right, when you read in the book of Maccabees. But in secular history, when it's BC, the time counts downward. All right, as you move forward in time, it counts downward. So 6 years later from 175 BC will land you right around 169 BC. Okay, so now as you're linking the time together, you're seeing when it says here that Antiochus came against Jerusalem after he had smitten Egypt in the 143rd year. If you want to know what that time is in the secular history, that's right around 169 BC. That's when he withdrew from Egypt after his first encounter in there. All right, and that's accurate because when you actually go here to the Sixth Syrian War, okay, it says here, let's see. However, this was unacceptable to the people of Alexandria, who responded. Actually, let me go here. Antiochus took Ptolemy VI, who was his nephew, under his guardianship, and this is after he has defeated him, giving him effective control of Egypt. However, this was unacceptable to the people of Alexandria, who responded by proclaiming Ptolemy Physcon, which was the brother of Ptolemy Philopator, as sole king. Antiochus besieged Alexandria, but he was unable to cut communications to the city. So at the end of 169, he withdrew his army. See, he returned. Daniel 11 and 28, right? Then shall he return, okay, into his own land. That's when he withdrew. So that's right around 169 BC. And that's around the same time, okay, that we're reading about in First Maccabees. It says after that Antiochus has smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year. Okay, 169 BC, 143rd year. Okay, and what did he do? And went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude. Going back to Daniel 11, it says, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant, which is Israel, and he shall do exploits and return to his own land. So now let's read the exploits he did. And he entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and all the vessels thereof, and the table of the shewbread and the pouring vessels and the vials and the censers of gold and the veil and the crown and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He also took the silver and gold and precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre and spoken very proudly. Okay, boom. He shall do exploits and return into his own land. We just read the exploits he did, and then what? After that, he returned to his own land. Okay, so this was after that first time he goes into Egypt, and he comes back, he does the exploits, then he goes to his land. Okay, so that's Daniel 11 and 28. Verse 29 says, at the appointed time he shall return and come toward the south. So now, meaning he's going to come back again, all right, and come toward the south, which is what? Egypt. Okay, so if some time later, which is really this approximately a year, 2 years, around that time, okay, after he goes to his own land, he returns, okay, because the reason he withdrew was it was getting to, remember it says at the end of 169, so that's getting towards winter. Okay, so he ended up withdrawing, and then some time later he comes back again. This is his second voyage, all right, or his second attempt to go and conquer Egypt. All right, so that's Daniel 11 and 29. And at the time appointed he shall return and come toward the south, all right, come into Egypt. But it shall not be as the former or as the latter. Okay, and this is because when Antiochus came back the second time into Egypt, it wasn't going to go the same way it went the first time. When he came back the second time into Egypt, Ptolemy was no longer, because when he left the first time, he left Ptolemy as a puppet king. So in his mind, he's like, all right, I'm coming back. Ptolemy is still my puppet. I'm going to use the excuse that he's my nephew and I'm trying to set him up as king. He's still having beef with his brother, so I could use that to my advantage, so on and so forth. All right, but see, when he came back, the story was different. Ptolemy had made up with his brother, all right, and they became cool again, and they joined forces. So now Antiochus is coming in there, but it's not as the former or as the latter. Things are not the way they were when he left. Okay, so now let's go to the book of 2 Maccabees chapter 5 verse 1. So it says, about the same time Antiochus prepared his second voyage into Egypt. Okay, and that's why it says here that at the appointed time he shall return and come towards the south. That was his second voyage into Egypt. All right, so when you read in the book of 2 Maccabees, the 5th chapter, this is all dealing with what happened when Antiochus made his second voyage into Egypt. Okay, what happened then? What did he do when he went there? What happened in his absence? What did he do when he came back? Okay. So now, as I mentioned, it says that it shall not be as the former or as the latter. All right. For the ships of Kittim shall come against him. Now the ships of Kittim that came against him was dealing with the Romans. Okay, the Roman envoy. Okay, Gaius, Popillius, Laenas, who was sent. All right, because the Ptolemies appealed to Rome, and they sent, all right, this envoy to come and defend them. Okay, so it says, for the ships of Kittim shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return. All right, they came against Antiochus, therefore he shall be grieved and return, and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. Now the holy covenant being Israel. So shall he do, and he shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. Okay, so now let's go and read the account of this. All right, now dealing with the 6th Syrian war. All right, it says here, in his absence, so after Antiochus withdrew, okay, in his absence, Ptolemy VI and his brother were reconciled. Antiochus, angered at his loss of control over the king, invaded again. Okay, the Egyptians sent to Rome asking for help, and the Senate dispatched Gaius, Popillius, Laenas to Alexandria. All right, the ships of Kittim that came against them. Meanwhile, Antiochus had seized Cyprus and Memphis and was marching on Alexandria. At Eleusis, on the outskirts of the capital, he met Popillius Laenas, with whom he had been friends during his stay in Rome. But instead of a friendly welcome, Popillius offered the king an ultimatum from the Senate. He must evacuate Egypt and Cyprus immediately. Antiochus begged to have time to consider, but Popillius drew a circle around him in the sand with his cane and told him to decide before he stepped outside it. Antiochus chose to obey the Roman ultimatum. The day of Eleusis ended the Sixth Syrian War and Antiochus's hopes of conquering Egyptian territory. All right. Now we can also read it from the perspective here under Antiochus Epiphanes. It says here, in 168 BC, Antiochus led a second attack on Egypt and also sent a fleet to capture Cyprus. Before he reached Alexandria, his path was blocked by a single elderly Roman ambassador named Gaius Popillius Laenas, who delivered a message from the Roman Senate directing Antiochus to withdraw his armies from Egypt and Cyprus, or consider himself in a state of war with the Roman Republic. Alright, and it's the same thing. It's going to say the same thing. He basically drew a circle around Antiochus and said, give me an answer before you get out the circle, or else by default, that's going to be war against Rome. Alright, so that forced Antiochus to basically, submit, alright, to that. Okay, so now going back to Daniel 11, verse 29, when Antiochus came back, alright, his second voyage into Egypt, it wasn't the same as it was before. Alright, and this time the Romans sent that envoy. Those are the ships of Kittim that came against them, was that Roman envoy, and he was grieved because of that. Alright, and so he returned. It says, and have indignation against the holy covenant, and so shall he do. So when he returned, he took out his anger, okay, and wrath upon Israel. It says he shall even return and have intelligence, all right, with them that forsake the holy covenant. Meaning, when to do these exploits, all right, he was in agreement, all right, or coordination with wicked Israelites, namely Menelaus, who was that wicked high priest at the time. Okay, along with other wicked Israelites, all right, together, all right, like that's why it says with them that forsake the holy covenant. Okay, now one thing also to mention is while Antiochus was in Egypt the second time, okay, and he was dealing with, Gaius Popillius Laenas, and he was already pissed off about that. Jason, all right, had basically invaded, okay, Jerusalem. All right, and we're going to read about that here. There was a rumor, all right, as a matter of fact, let's just read it. So about the same time, 2 Maccabees chapter 5 verse 1. About the same time, Antiochus prepared his second voyage into Egypt, and then it appeared that through all the city, for the space almost of 40 days, there were seen horsemen running in the air, in cloth of gold, and armed with lances, like a band of soldiers, and troops of horsemen in array, encountering and running one against another, with shaking of shields, and multitude of spikes, and drawing of swords, and casting of darts, and glittering of golden ornaments, and harness of all sorts. Wherefore every man prayed that that apparition might turn to good. All right, so basically they actually saw this in the heavens. All right, the angels doing this. Okay, it says, now when there was gone forth, so now that Antiochus is gone into Egypt, okay, and he's dealing with Gaius Popillius and all of that extra stuff. Now when there was gone forth a false rumor, as though Antiochus had been dead, Jason took at least 1,000 men and suddenly made an assault upon the city. And they that were upon the walls being put back, and the city at length taken, Menelaus fled into the castle. So while Antiochus was in Egypt, there was a rumor that went out that he was dead. And so Jason, who had fled into the land of the Ammonites, he'd said, oh, Antiochus is dead? All right, bet. I'm going to come over and take over Jerusalem. Okay. It says, but Jason slew his own citizens without mercy, not considering that to get the day of them of his own nation would be a most unhappy day for him. But thinking they had been his enemies, and not his countrymen who he conquered. So he didn't look at Jake as his brothers. He looked at them as enemies. That's why he was killing them. All right, taking over mercilessly. Howbeit, for all this he obtained not the principality, all right, but at the last received shame for the reward of his treason, and fled again into the country of the Ammonites. So he wasn't able to take over, okay, and gain the authority. So he fled again back into the land of Ammon. It says, in the end thereof he had an unhappy return, being accused before Aretas, the king of the Arabians, fleeing from city to city, pursued of all men, hated as a forsaker of the laws, and being had in abomination as an open enemy of his country and countrymen, he was cast out into Egypt. So now he was fleeing from place to place, like a what do they call that? Fugitive. All right. It says, thus he that had driven out many of their country, or he that had driven many out of their country, perished in a strange land, retiring to the Lacedaemonians, and thinking there to find succor by reason of his kindred, because the Lacedaemonians were the Spartans, all right, and they were actually Israelites. They were Jews. Okay, that's why it says he went there thinking he could find succor by reason of his kindred, because they were what? Israelites. It says, and that he had cast out many unburied, had none, and he that had cast out many unburied had none to mourn for him, nor any solemn funerals at all, nor sepulchre with his fathers, going into Jason. Okay, so he did all this and it didn't work out for him. Okay, now when this that was done came to the king's car, he thought that Judea had revolted, whereupon, removing out of Egypt in a furious mind, he took the city by force of arms. Okay, so mind you, he's grieved, okay, because Gaius Popillius has stopped his second invasion of Egypt. Now at that time, he hears this news while he's in Egypt. Okay, he hears this news that there's all this chaos going on in Jerusalem and Judea. Why? Because Jason had come over there and tried to take it over. So when he heard that, he thought that Jake was revolting over there. Okay, so he's already pissed off about this Gaius Popillius situation, and now he's hearing that Jake is revolting. Of course he was going to be. That's why it says, wherefore, removing out of Egypt in a furious mind, he took the city by force of arms. Okay, and as it says, he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant, Israel. Okay, so shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. So let's read about some of the things he did when he returned out of anger. So it says, and commanded his men of war not to spare such as they met, and to slay such as went upon the houses. Thus there was killing of young and old, making away of men, women, and children, slaying of virgins and infants. All right, and they were destroyed within the space of 3 whole days, 80,000, whereof 40,000 were slain in the conflict, and no fewer sold than slain. So they were killing Jake, selling Jake, you know. It says, yet was he not content with this, but presumed to go into the most holy temple of all the world. Menelaus, that traitor to the laws, and his own country being his guide. So Menelaus was leading Antiochus, all right, into that temple. All right, that's why it says he was going to have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. Okay, he was a traitor to the laws and his countrymen. Okay, so in essence, he had forsaken the holy covenant. All right, and there were people that were with him as well that were, on his side, who were also Israelites. All right, so it says, and taking the holy vessels with polluted hands and with profane hands, pulling down the things that were dedicated by other kings to the augmentation and glory and honor of the place, he gave them away. And so haughty was Antiochus in mind, that he considered not that the Lord was angry for a while for the sins of them that dwelt in the city, and therefore his eye was not upon that place. Meaning, Antiochus didn't consider that the reason he was able to have success in doing all these atrocities was because the Most High was pissed off. And so he wasn't, like it says, his eye was not upon the place, so he allowed it to happen. Okay? It says, for had they not been formerly wrapped in many sins, okay, had Israel not been going off, this man, as soon as he had come, had forthwith been scourged and put back from his presumption as Heliodorus was. Meaning, it says, whom Seleucus the king sent to view the treasury. Meaning, had Israel not been going off, then when Antiochus had come, as soon as he pulled up to do the shit he was doing, he would have got his ass beat, just like Heliodorus got his ass beat. Okay? And then it goes on, it says, nevertheless, the Most High did not choose the people for the place's sake, but the place for the people's sake. So now I'm going to jump down a bit. Okay, verse 21. So when Antiochus carried out of the temple 1,800 talents, he departed in all haste unto Antiochus, weening in his pride to make the land navigable and the sea passable by foot. Such was the haughtiness of his mind. Okay, so that was Daniel 11:30. He returned and had indignation against the holy covenant. All right, and so shall he do. He shall even return and have indignation with them that forsake the holy covenant. All right, and that's what he did, and we just read that with Menelaus leading him. Okay, but that wasn't the end of it. So after he left, he says, and he left governors to vex the nation at Jerusalem. Philip for his country at a Phrygian, and for the manners more barbarous than he that set him there. It says, and at Garizim, Andronicus, and besides Menelaus, who worse than all the rest bear an heavy hand over the citizens, having a malicious mind against his countrymen, the Jews. Okay, so these are the governors that he left. Okay, after he had done the atrocities and he went back to his own land, he left Philip, okay, in Jerusalem. He left Andronicus and Garizim, and also Menelaus, who also would have been in Jerusalem as well. Okay, and he left them there. And then it says here, he sent also that detestable ringleader Apollonius with an army of 22,000, commanding him to slay all those that were in their best age, and to sell the women and the younger sort. Okay, now this portion right here, okay, the ringleader Andronicus that was sent by Antiochus, okay, it's the same here. All right, it's talking about the same thing here in verse 29. It says, and after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Judah, who came to Jerusalem with a great multitude. All right. It says here in 2 Maccabees 5, he sent also that detestable ringleader Apollonius with an army of 22,000. All right. That was a great multitude, 22,000. Okay. It says here, and it's talking about the same event because just you can hear the parallels in it. All right. Verse 30, 1 Maccabees 1 and 30. It says here, so this guy who was sent by Antiochus, he came with a great multitude, and this is what he did. And spake peaceable words unto them, unto who? Jake. But all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much people of Israel. Right? And this is the account in 1 Maccabees, the 1st chapter. Now let's read the account in 2 Maccabees, the 5th chapter, so it's talking about the same thing. Verse 25, 2 Maccabees 5 and 25. So this guy was sent, it says, who coming to Jerusalem and pretending peace did forbear till the holy day of the Sabbath, when the Jews were keeping a holy day, he commanded his men to arm themselves. Okay, and so he slew all them that were gone to the celebrating of the Sabbath, and running through the city with weapons, slew great multitudes. Okay, Same thing. He came peaceably onto them, but it was deceit. When they gave him credence, he fell upon the city. All right. So it's talking about the same event. Okay. Now going back to Daniel 11. Okay. In verse 30, the ships of Kittim that came against him, dealing with Gaius, Popillius, Laenas, they grieved Antiochus. But upon that, he also heard that he thought Jake revolted. So he returned and he did all the things that we read in the book of 2 Maccabees, the 5th chapter, against Jake. And he had intelligence, partnership, coordination with certain wicked Israelites, namely Menelaus. All right. Now in verse 31, it says, and arms shall stand on his part, meaning armies. Okay. And they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. Okay. This happened when he sent, all right, when he sent that chief collector and that person came in there. All right. That's the armies. Okay. The armies that shall stand on his part were those that were sent, okay, by that chief collector, okay, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, which is the temple, all right, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. So now let's read about that. Okay, so this is 1 Maccabees 1:29, and after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Judah, who came to Jerusalem with a great multitude, and spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much people of Israel. And when he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and the walls thereof on every side. But the women and children took they captive, and possessed the cattle. It says here, then builded they the city of David with a great and strong wall, and with mighty towers, and made it a stronghold for them. And they put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. They stored it also with armor and victuals, and when they had gathered together the spoils of Jerusalem, they laid them up there, so they became a sore snare. It says, for it was a place to lie in against the sanctuary, and evil adversary to Israel. All right, and then it goes on, so on and so forth. I want to hit the main point. Okay, it says, I'm gonna just keep reading. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary, and defiled it. All right, they defiled it. Remember, Daniel 11:31, they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength. Right? They shall pollute the what? The sanctuary. Right? So let's read that. It says, thus it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary, right? An evil adversary to Israel. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary, and defiled it. All right? Which is what? Polluting the sanctuary. Okay? It says, in so much that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled before them, whereupon the city was made an habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her, and her own children left her, because Jake was fleeing. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths, okay, into reproach, her honor into contempt. All right? Remember, it says that they were going to take away the daily sacrifice, and that they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. Let's keep reading. It says, verse 40, as had been her glory, so was her honor increased, or so was her dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and that every one should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people. Okay, let's go back to Daniel 11 and 31. And arms shall stand on his part, Antiochus's armies, and they shall what? They shall pollute the sanctuary of strength. And what are they going to do? And take away the daily sacrifice, 1 Maccabees 1 and 45, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice. Okay. It says, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. Let's keep reading. It says, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh, all right, and unclean beasts. All right. It says that they should leave their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. Let's see. Yeah, that's all right. That's pretty much where I pretty much got the point on, all right, on that verse, okay, to support this Daniel 11:31. All right, so after Antiochus returned, okay, and he did the damage to Israel, led with Menelaus, he sent, all right, his armies, okay, led by that chief tax collector, all right, who came, and then, you know, they did all of this, all right. Around that same time, they polluted the sanctuary, all right, they stopped the daily sacrifice, they sacrificed swine's flesh on the altar, all right, they did all these things, okay. Verse 32 says, and such as do wickedly against the covenant shall be corrupt by flatteries, okay, meaning fine promises, okay, money, status, okay. You had certain Israelites that consented to joining Antiochus's cause and doing wickedly against the covenant, okay, because of those things, because of them selling out and whatever Antiochus might have promised them, okay. It says, but the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits, okay. And that's dealing with those Israelites, okay, that decided to stand firm, okay, in you know, and stay and not forsake, you know, the laws or the holy covenant. You know, you have certain individuals like Matthias, all right, and then the Maccabean family, okay. And as a matter of fact, I think it's even going to mention it here as well. All right, verse 62. Howbeit, many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed themselves not to eat anything unclean. Wherefore the rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died. Okay, going back to Daniel 11 and 32. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries. But the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. All right, we just read that there were certain Israelites, all right, that were resolved. All right, they were strong. Okay, and they stood firm, okay, for the laws of the Lord. All right, and it even goes more into depth with the exploits, the wars, you know, and the battles that they fought, okay, to stand strong for the Lord. All right, but I'm pretty much going to stop it here. Next time, you know, I'm going to go over verse 32 again, and, you know, we'll go down a bit more, going into the Maccabees, you know, Judas Maccabees, Simon, Jonathan, Matthias, you know, and all the things that they did. All right, but yeah, that was pretty much it, okay, on Daniel 11 and 28 on down to 32. All right, the recap is basically Antiochus returns from Egypt, does damages to Israel, okay, then goes to his own land, and then some time later he comes back into Egypt the second time, but this time it's not the same as before. All right, the Romans come against him and stop him from invading Egypt, and at the same time he hears, all right, that he thinks Jerusalem has revolted, so he goes back all pissed off, kills a lot of Jake, all right, you know, he teams up with wicked Israelites, Menelaus, and so on and so forth. And then later on, he sends he sends armies, all right, to come and pollute the sanctuary, take away the sacrifice. He writes letters onto them, letting them know that, you can't be a Jew anymore, and so on and so forth. All right. So that was pretty much it on that. Lord willing, that was edifying and informative onto the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakha Kudash. Until next time, Shalom.